Hi guys, I wanted to pop on here today and talk about branding in your short-term rental. In the show notes on the side, there's a link to a blog post that just went live last night, and a lot of the links that I mentioned are in there, as well as a template that I'm going to give you away for free in the blog post. Okay, so I've spent 13 years as a creative director, and I've been branding my short-term rental lately. And I wanted to talk about how branding a short-term rental is actually a flip-flop of branding a regular company in most cases. Because basically with most companies, you start out with a business idea and you really kick the company off with branding. And then after a while, you'll get like an interior space where you're doing interior design in an office space or something like that. So you extend your logo and colors into like a physical space. But with a short-term rental, you're usually starting with the physical space, and you have to think about that as a brand that you will then extend into a logo and color palette. So I think that's really interesting, because I want people to think about their brand from the get-go when they're starting up their short-term rental, so that they can seamlessly build the bigger brand that they'll then market around and share on social media. And why is this important? Well, basically, excuse me, when you have a well-designed space, it tells a story, and it also sets the mood for an experience, which is what you're trying to do in a short-term rental. It's a home, it's a special space, it's not a hotel room, right? And you want your guests to have a certain experience. So, there's a million different things you can do, but like in wine country, you can put special wine touches. At Disneyland, there's whole Disneyland themed short-term rentals. So you can help relate to your target market. And that might take some time. Like when you first start off your short-term rental, you might not even know who your target market is. So you could give it some time and see who they are and then build the design around that. So again, you don't have the brand to start out with a lot of the times. Also, if your short-term rental is designed with a certain like brand and color palette, it photographs really well. And in these days of social media sharing, if your space is branded and you're using user-generated content to populate, let's say, your Instagram feed, then it all looks on brand because you've designed the whole space with a theme and a color palette and a style in mind. Also, when you take photos of your space and everything is really cohesively designed, it photographs better. And people are making buying decisions on platforms like Airbnb within 8 seconds. People have no attention spans. They're probably getting through maybe your first 3 photographs. And if they look really awesome and branded and cohesive and hip and cool, like people are going to want to stay there. But if it looks like, a basement and it's really sad and scary, they're probably going to skip over it. There's a lot of competition on platforms like that. So you really want your space to stand out. Okay, so let's talk about this kind of backwards flow through a short-term rental. So when I started up my first short-term rental, I bought over 165 items to furnish a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. And that's a lot of buying decisions that you're making, and you're trying to get your short-term rental set up very quickly and on the market. And if you don't have a plan in place, you can really end up getting a ton of mismatched junk in your place. It's going to photograph terribly, and you're going to have to redo it eventually when you're trying to upgrade your space. So having a plan, like a brand, theme, interior design theme, a color palette, and certain materials that you'll stick to really helps when you're having to make all these buying decisions. I went through my list and I bought over 30 throw pillows for that property. And so to make buying decisions like that easy, if you have like a style guide with all of your colors and all of your styles that you're going in, you can go on to different home finding software or platforms like Wayfair or Amazon and type in something like boho throw pillow pink. And then you'll get a lot of results for that, and you'll stay within your style guide and color palette. And it can actually relieve a lot of the stress of all of those buying decisions. And this can also be helpful if you're setting up a space for a short-term rental that you already own and is already furnished, but it needs to be like cohesively designed. You can kind of go through and see what pieces you like and set your style around that so that the extra pieces that you have to buy, artwork and carpets and things like that, are matching what you already have and you spend less money. So another thing I want to talk about is, first off, most people have their short-term rental space, right? And then as a second step, once they're operating and successful and they want to bring their short-term rental to the next level, then they want to start marketing it. And most people start on platforms like Instagram or Facebook, and they'll have specific platforms and branding for their short-term rental. Like I just started one for Lodi Landing on Instagram, and it's just going to be specifically for that. Even though I've already talked about it on my own channels, I'm going to have a specific one for the listing. I've also created a website for my short-term rentals, and it has blog posts on there that have places for Lodi Landing. Since it's in wine country, it has wine country suggestions, what to do at the house, different activities for families, and also restaurant suggestions. So people, like, the sky's the limit when marketing your own short-term rental. If you're just relying on the platforms that they're on, that can work. But if you want to have like higher price per night, you need this cohesively designed space. And it's really helpful to start with the space and then work out into your branding, right? So I've created a template that you can download. The link is in my bio on Instagram and in my show notes on this post. It's at the bottom, and it comes in Keynote and PowerPoint. It's totally free. Just go and grab it. And you can set up your color palette. If you have a logo for your short-term rental, you can put that in there. And then you'll define all the materials that you're going to use. So 5 key materials that you're going to stick to for your design. So if it's like leather or iron, fur, what have you, the sky's the limit there. And then at the bottom of that, I'm going to have you create a mood board. And that mood board will help you get ideas. Excuse me. That mood board will help you get ideas of how to set up your short-term rental.